Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, back once again highlighting some of the great demos I got to check out during Steam's Next Fest. I'll be doing things a little differently this year, and apart from this summary video highlighting the 10 best from Next Fest, quite a few of these games are going to get deeper dive videos released over the next little while on the channel too, since some of the games on display this year have been particularly juicy, even in demo form. So, if you want to keep an eye on all that, don't hesitate to subscribe, and if you have any of your own favorites from Next Fest that you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I'm always looking for more games. As always, my focus is around strategy, city building, sim, management, and tactical RPG type games, and that's exactly what drives the contents of today's video. Remember to wishlist any of these games that catch your eye, since that really helps developers out with visibility on Steam, and it keeps you up to date with their development too. Now, with no more time to waste, let's begin. IXION has had me excited since it was first announced with its rather ominous reveal trailer. The Next Fest demo showcased a lot of the mechanics and features quite nicely, and I'll be diving deeper into the game in a separate video at a later date, but for now, a summary will have to suffice. Earth has reached a turning point, no longer able to sustain the human population that continues to grow at an exponential rate. One man and his corporation, Dolos, have worked tirelessly towards a solution, and the time has come to seek out an alternative home for humanity. You are put in charge of the exploration station, the Tycoon, and under the watchful eye of the corporation and the Marduk Council that controls it, you'll have to manage the station and its activities as it heads towards what seems to be humanity's last hope. IXION has you dealing with limited space as you harvest resources to build and upgrade the station, performing research to unlock new options or to improve the ones you have, while you try to sustain life and stability aboard the station as well. You'll unlock new sections of the station's ring over time, giving you more room to work, and you'll have to manage each section both individually and as a part of the whole, using various tools at your disposal to ensure each section is working optimally. Whether you're balancing your power consumption or you're trying to produce enough food to feed the growing population, IXION will keep you on your toes as you manage the interior and exterior of your station, ensuring the integrity of the hull and society itself are both maintained. There are some very strong Frostpunk vibes coming from IXION, from the trust factor to the events that come up from time to time that either make a request of you or give you an opportunity to make decisions for the future of the station. You'll also be dealing with system-wide interactions as you build, store, and send out mining and cargo ships to acquire various resources, or send out science ships to investigate mysterious anomalies. Are you truly the first attempt by the Dolos Corporation to find a new home for humanity? IXION really nails the storytelling, the visuals are absolutely stunning, the voice acting is top-notch, and the tools at your disposal both inside and outside the station seem to be very compelling. The Next Fest demo showed a lot of promise, and I cannot wait to play more. Pharaoh: A New Era is set to release later this year, and I'd be lying if I didn't say this remaster of the classic isn't one of my most hotly anticipated games that had a demo at Next Fest. I grew up on these city builders, and to see one so faithfully recreated for the new era of audio-visual capabilities is really something special. You'll have to forgive the nostalgia here, but Pharaoh and its expansion Cleopatra were some of my favorites as a kid, and this game combines both of those into one game featuring 50 playable missions, hundreds of hours of gameplay, and a mission editor as well. If you're unfamiliar with these Sierra city builders or the Impressions city builders, Pharaoh: A New Era is an excellent place to dive in. The isometric city builder has you plotting out residential areas, organizing supply chains, mining for and processing resources, and building up everything from temples and palaces to, of course, mastabas and pyramids and more besides. These games were always an excellent bar for the genre, and the core concepts still hold up as you're challenged to provide people with needs from food and water to entertainment and religion, and as you're fighting threats like disease, fire, and building collapses and more. You'll be managing the spread of citizens to ensure all businesses have employees, and as your cities grow and expand across multiple missions and multiple locations, you'll be introduced to new concepts that constantly push you further and further. Appeasing the gods, harnessing the ebb and flow of the Nile, optimizing your use of fertile and infertile soil, and filtering through reports from your overseers are all part of the experience. And though some systems have been adapted for modern sensibilities, Pharaoh: A New Era remains loyal to the original as best as possible, and playing the demo during Next Fest really reminded me why these games left a mark in my life and how they, in many ways, still set the bar. If you never played the originals, I implore you to keep an eye on this gem, and if you did play the originals, here's your chance to relive those happy memories. Pharaoh: A New Era is looking fantastic. The Iron Oath is an absolute gem whose demo has me immediately excited for the full game set to release in spring of this year. As a turn-based tactical RPG, you'll be in charge of a group of mercenaries traveling from location to location to rest, recuperate, and hire more mercs to join your cause as you take on quests from various factions. You'll train, level up, and kit out your group in order to take on a few different types of enemies, including those affected by the mysterious Scourge. You'll be fighting humans, specters, skeletons, and unholy machinations alike. Each of these enemies has their own set of special abilities, constantly keeping you on your toes, and you'll find yourself getting beat down and torn apart quite a bit as you explore dungeons, trigger traps, and make spur-of-the-moment decisions that either appease or upset your party members based on their personalities. There are many similarities here to Battle Brothers, one of my all-time favorites in the genre, but the Iron Oath is doing plenty to set itself apart as well. Apart from the beautiful art style and music and the top-notch writing, the Iron Oath is taking a more narrative approach. It's very much in the high fantasy side of things as well, and it introduces a dungeon crawling aspect between the overworld where you travel from point of interest to point of interest, and the cities where you shop, recruit, rest, and seek contracts. This dungeon crawling has you managing time as a resource, with each step and each action costing time that, as time goes on, makes your crawl more and more challenging. If you're familiar with Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, it's sort of like that, where time itself is very much against you. And that actually goes beyond dungeon crawls. Your mercenaries will age and eventually retire if they're lucky enough to survive that long, so you'll need to keep a fresh and able stock always at hand, again introducing a new dynamic to this type of setup. The Iron Oath very quickly grabbed my attention. All of the abilities are super interesting and beautifully animated. All of the enemies are compelling with unique abilities and features that you have to kind of discover as you go along, and it's great to see each of your party members' personalities come into play in conversations and events beyond their abilities on the battlefield. And all this was in the demo alone. I cannot wait for the full version here. The Iron Oath is looking fantastic. Fata Deum has really strong black and white and populous vibes. If you're familiar with the God games, a lot of what Fata Deum is doing will look very familiar in the best ways possible. The game has you playing as a young god capable of performing miracles and influencing people's actions through visions and dreams. It pits you against other gods, each of their own leanings. You'll find yourself going from island to island, competing with these other gods in the hopes of conquering the hearts and minds of the inhabitants of each island, littered across multiple villages and towns. The demo had just the one island that you could spend 6 days on, and you were pit against a god whose inclination you chose. You collect mana through a variety of actions like collecting resources at your altar, but primarily it'll happen through having more believers in you on that island, encouraging you to spread your faith. That very same mana is what you use to perform various miracles, some of which will directly add more followers to your flock, and so you can kind of see how the gameplay loop builds there. Other miracles might make people grow their town's population, or get them to work harder or feel more energized, or you can use these miracles to drain people's life source and work them to their grave, or instill fear in a person, or perhaps raise zombies. As you can imagine, your godhood can be one of metaphorical rainbows and unicorns, or of absolute terror and despair, and the game's systems encourage you to lean into your moral compass as it becomes more expensive and difficult to perform miracles from the opposite end of the spectrum of your regular behavior. A good god will have a harder time raising the dead, while a terrible god will have a harder time inspiring good feelings. There are 2 additional resources aside from mana, yin and yang, which you need to collect by performing good and evil miracles, which are in turn used to perform even greater good and evil miracles. So you can see how your behavior is rewarded the more you commit, and how you sometimes will need to waffle a little bit if you're trying to do something let's call it out of character for your usual godliness. At night, things change as you go from performing miracles on a personal level and collecting resources to inspiring larger actions through people's dreams, getting them to build structures, train for battle, or in fact, go to war with other villages. Again, you'll spend the mana at your disposal as well as the yin and yang resources to influence some of the bigger decisions, like going looting and raiding. Beyond miracles, you'll also be answering prayers from time to time, side quests you could say, where your believers ask you to accomplish something for them in return for prayer points. These prayer points and your total believer count then come together to help you level up over time, acquiring new abilities and more miracles as you gain levels and try to oust your competition. There are a lot of interesting ideas here, and the devs have been very receptive to feedback over the course of many demos and alpha and beta builds too. I am very excited to see where this goes next, and it's definitely on my radar. The First Men is a very promising colony building / strategy game where you take control of a people just as they have started to establish their first settlement. Like most colony management games, you'll find yourself occupied with each individual character and their unique traits and personalities, and you'll find yourself building spaces for them to work, eat, rest, train for battle, and do what needs doing in order to survive in an unforgiving world. But the nuance of how you manage these things and how your characters and in fact your colony as a whole evolves over time feels unlike anything I've seen, at least in recent times. For one, the 5 key resources, or as the game calls them, entity points, are prosperity, industry, influence, unity, and amenity. These are all representing sort of higher level concepts. Sure, your people are collecting various types of food and wood and stone and gold and all that stuff, but that's not what the resource bar says. The resource bar says prosperity. What does that mean? Well, it means a variety of things, and a variety of things will grow your prosperity, and then you can spend that prosperity for a variety of options we'll get into in a second. Same goes for industry. You acquire industry through a variety of tasks and objectives, and then you spend that industry to craft items or build houses. I love how it obfuscates stuff that is typically very one-to-one, and it makes things just a little bit more interesting and opens things up for exploration and discovery. I love that kind of stuff. Now, of these, I would say unity and amenity are perhaps the most interesting. The former is used to unlock new traditions for your people, which in turn unlocks new options as far as behaviors, tasks, structures, and personality traits are concerned, while the latter is used to unlock bragging rights that empower your people in various ways, depending on their backgrounds, their personality traits, or their actions. It's a cornucopia of things. I'm pretty sure I haven't even seen all the permutations. It's great. Beyond these entity points, the way characters develop over time is also unlike anything I've seen, at least again in recent times. Each completed task generates path points, and every time a character, child or adult, obtains 100 path points, they're able to pick an unlock from one of multiple paths, each themed to match the entity points and a wild card. Characters aren't locked to a path, and at times they'll want to jump between paths to find good synergies, but options vary from craftable equipment to buildings to personality traits to physical attributes to knowledge and abilities and even pregnancy. As you make these choices, you're not simply leveling up a specific skill or making linear progression down a track, but instead, you're trying to build these people up in a way that influences their behavior the way you need, stepping in with more direct control from time to time when you want them to, say, build or craft something, or when you form and draft a party to go adventuring and responding to quests. Having a character lean into warrior-like personality traits will have them choose to train for battle and perform activities more in line with that kind of personality. But in a pinch, the next time they reach 100 path points, you can have them take some time to prepare a shelter or farm or what have you before returning to their personality-based behaviors again. This creates a really interesting system that's mostly hands-off as you pursue traditions that unlock new options and then play around with the various options, growing your settlement, exploring the land around you, developing new technologies, and hopefully prospering as other civilizations do as well. The Next Fest demo had only one pre-built campaign scenario available, but more are listed. There are multiplayer modes, and there's a custom mode that promises tons of replayability as you engage in this fantastical world. I'm curious to see how these unique resources and character development systems hold up as the game goes on, and the large variety of options and permutations available in the demo alone was extremely promising. I'm not exaggerating when I say I had to rip myself away from the first men so that I could check out other demos. The game is tremendously interesting, it's full of surprises, and sometimes I'd be making decisions and taking actions and unlocking a plethora of new options without the game guiding me or holding my hand, and I absolutely love that. If you're familiar with me or the channel, you'll know I enjoy exploring and discovering in games, and The First Men does that excellently. I cannot wait to play more. I wish I could play more right now, but we're past Next Fest, so it'll have to wait. I'll be having a deep dive video because there is just so much to talk about with The First Men, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. I've had my eye on Crossfire Legion for some time now, and I actually released a video on the channel very recently that dives deeper into the game. If you're a fan of the classic RTS approach of base building, resource gathering, supply management, and fast-paced action, Crossfire Legion is one to keep an eye on. It has very strong StarCraft vibes as it pits 3 opposing factions against each other, and the whole angle is asymmetric balance. One faction relies on quantity over quality, another relies on shield technology and energy use, and another relies on staying power and guerrilla tactics. The added layer of customization and deck building means that each of these factions can be tweaked not just to match your particular playstyle and a specific opposing faction, but also to keep your enemy on their toes. Your faction pick doesn't immediately telegraph what units you might be coming in with, only the overall mechanics that you might be leaning into. The maps themselves are interestingly laid out with choke points, spaces to hide, and high ground and low ground situations to concern yourself with, alongside points of interest like healing zones, spaces that grant a great deal of vision, and of course, areas for expansion. The demo had 3 maps to play on as 2 players, 4 players, and 6 players, and we weren't able to try out any of the deck building, but as the game releases into early access soon and as a full game later this year, we'll be seeing more of these moving parts in action, alongside a campaign spread across 4 acts. Crossfire was originally an FPS, and it's actually one of the most played video games the world over, looking at player count alone, and this spin-off RTS is being made by the folks behind Homeworld 3 and previously Homeworld Deserts of Karak. The devs at Blackbird Interactive have experience in the field, and the demo was a promising foundation. If you're a fan of this subgenre of strategy games and you wish we had more games like it, I would definitely suggest keeping an eye on Crossfire Legion. Highrise City feels like 2 parts City Skylines and 1 part Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. It has some interesting ideas that one might find in either of those 2 games, especially before all the DLC in City Skylines came out, and Highrise City stands on their shoulders to create a blend that has a lot going for it. Set in the modern era, Highrise City makes you the mayor of a municipality and asks you to build it up from nothing. In the Next Fest demo, there was only 1 locale available, and you had to slowly grow your city to unlock more advanced structures and options, eventually unlocking the option to research technology separate from growth. As you build up your city, you very quickly start to realize how zoning, placeable buildings, and even population satisfaction has one key differentiator. They don't materialize from thin air. Though not as granular as Workers and Resources Soviet Republic, making buildings in Highrise City relies on actual resources. Higher tier buildings require a greater variety of said resources, and so one way or another, you're going to have to maintain your access to these resources if you want your city to grow. From lumber yards to clay pits and brick makers and who knows what else further down the line beyond the scope of the demo, the need for construction material in order to build everything from residential zones to fire stations means you can't rest on your laurels or just hope for a magical fire station to simply materialize in the middle of a disaster. Trading with other cities off-map can make up for whatever you're not able to acquire locally, and locally, you'll need to consider the availability of things like ores or clay as you plan your industrial sector. The needs of the residents, similarly, become a bit more complex. Rather than simply needing access to food as a generic element, they'll want access to a variety of food options as your city grows, and as higher levels of citizens start to move in, they'll eventually want access to clothes, asking you to establish a textile industry, or furniture, asking you to pursue that as well. You can see quickly how Highrise City becomes about more than just building pretty cities and managing traffic. You need to deal with supply chain management for nearly everything, from acquisition to processing to distribution of goods, and eventually you'll find yourself dealing with taxes, policies, loans, and more. The demo was a little short, and you couldn't get too far along, ironically missing the titular high-rises of Highrise City, but the foundation is there for a great new city builder. I'll keep my eyes on this one for sure. I've been following Potion Tycoon for quite some time now, as it strikes quite a few chords with me. I love management and tycoon games, I'm a sucker for atypical settings for said genre, and I absolutely adore games about alchemy and potion crafting that require you to discover useful combinations. So much so that a game I'd co-developed as a university project back in the day was centered around the concept. I really like this kind of concept. So I'm happy to say that Potion Tycoon holds up to my expectations so far, and I cannot wait to check more of it out. As you might expect from a game like this, you'll spend time laying out your shop, manufacturing areas and staff areas alike. You'll decorate the spaces, you'll buy equipment and functional furniture too, from shelves to stock your wares, to pallets to store your ingredients, to cauldrons and altars and bottling machines and more to actually process those ingredients into potions that people want to buy. You'll hire employees of different designations, leveling them up as they gain experience, unlocking more traits and upgrading specific abilities with each promotion, and you'll keep an eye out for deals with wholesalers as you try to manage your stock of ingredients, your salaries, and of course, your coffers. Guests of various archetypes and inclinations will come seeking potions of different categories, and your overall fame in servicing each of those categories and appeasing each of those archetypes will have a direct impact on your business. The better received your strength potion is among guards, for example, the more likely you are to see success in that area. From time to time, you'll receive requests for special orders, and at other times, you'll want to submit your potions in for competitions and see if you can't generate some publicity for your shop. One thing you'll want to keep an eye on is the news. From time to time, again, it'll give you clues as to what potions are about to become popular, and you might want to get ahead in their production. With wholesale prices fluctuating and some ingredients coming and going, you'll want to stay appropriately stocked up and prepared. The biggest selling point with Potion Tycoon is the actual recipe crafting. Mixing and matching different ingredients in different positions will draw out different effects from them, and as you research technologies and acquire additional processing methods, you'll be able to cut, rotate, purify, and do much more to each ingredient, opening up the number of combinations significantly. Ingredients won't just have a core effect, but they'll also have an influence on flavor, toxicity, purity, and other such aspects which can make a potion more or less appealing and more or less potent. And between creating a potent and delicious brew and designing its packaging, you'll have a lot of experimentation to do to make sure your potions are bringing in the profits. I had a lot of fun messing around with various ingredient combinations and placements, trying to see how the different processes changed the ingredients' properties and how they affected production time versus value, and I absolutely cannot wait to explore even more options that'll be available in the full game. Potion Tycoon is living up to my expectations, and I had an absolute blast. The Wandering Village was brought to my attention when it had launched its Kickstarter, and the unique angle immediately had me intrigued. You lead a group of villagers ousted from their home by worsening conditions. A toxic sickness takes over the world, destroying the very earth itself, spreading disease and decay. During your wanderings, your people happen across an onbu, a giant species of beast long thought extinct, and upon its back, you find the opportunity to build a new home. The Wandering Village has you tackling all of the usual colony management aspects, but with some interesting twists to shake things up. You'll need to keep an eye on your population and their needs, from shelter to food to physical well-being. They'll need you to build resource gathering spots as well as resource processing buildings, and they'll need you to build farms and kitchens and storage areas, building a slowly growing village with quickly expanding complexities as you look to settle down on this creature. As you do all this, the creature itself will be traveling the world at its leisure. Eventually, you'll be able to research technology that afford you some control over it, should it trust you, but by and large, you're kind of at its mercy, and the mercy of the land it travels through. Its path will sometimes be hit by cold snaps or dry spells that might kill your crops, Prolonged walks through the desert can drain your water supply, and areas with heightened toxicity might see your people and the beast itself fall ill. Should the Onbu die, your villagers will surely perish, so you must keep it fed and healthy and happy, while also, at times, exploiting it, mining deep into it to acquire stone, or harvesting its blood to cook into black pudding when the farms are dry and the people starving. Scavenging teams can be sent out to explore the world and bring back resources you lack on the beast itself, and as time goes on, the pressure of keeping your people and the beast alive gets higher and more complex. The Wandering Village really leans into its unique selling point. Many games shy away from such commitment for fear of being too different, but no, the devs here are diving in with both feet, and they're creating a game that is equal parts audiovisually beautiful and mechanically compelling. From managing villager satisfaction to tech trees to production lines, there's a lot to do in the Wandering Village, all in a very fresh and unique setting worth exploring. Ozymandias seems like a simple game at first glance, and in some ways, compared to other titles in this video, it is. It has only a handful of moving parts, yes, but the way it ties them all together makes for a fun and beautifully illustrated experience that is equally welcoming to people new to the genre and punishing for those who are seeking a challenge. And hey, with a multiplayer mode, you can always find a challenge out there. A streamlined turn-based 4X game, Ozymandias has you managing your burgeoning empire across one of many locales, though only the Middle East was available in the demo, alongside a few other locations in the tutorials. Each turn, you earn resources based on the tiles under your control, and each turn, you spend your food to do a variety of things, including claiming new tiles of various types. Each type of tile will have its own costs and yields, and by spending research points, you can alter their costs to claim as well as their yields, acquiring technology as needed based on your evolving situation. Wealth can be used to invest in one of the other resources, to hoard, or to raise armies and navies, which are in turn empowered by your nation's power resource, which they use to project your empire's power onto adjacent enemy tiles in order to conquer them, should they be stronger than the enemy's defenses. Each game has a handful of objectives based on the map, and each of the empires competes for the same objectives, with the first to attain enough deemed the winner. A game of Ozymandias isn't meant to last days or even hours. They're quick bouts as you go turn after turn, rushing to acquire tiles, adapting your people to your circumstances, raising armies and fleets to either hold your ground or conquer more, establishing multiple cities to help spread your empire further more cheaply, and strategizing which tiles to prioritize for which yields under which circumstances. It becomes a game of quick wits, and every 30 or so minutes you'll see a victor and you'll want to clear the board and try again. Each turn presents unique opportunities to each player as well, and you can pick and choose them based on the objective they provide and the reward that comes with them, using them to drive your decisions in the short term, while the larger objectives drive your bigger decisions. The presentation in this sort of archaeological dig format adds a layer of charm to the game, and from the music to the UI to the great way in which these, again, seemingly simple mechanics come together to create a complex overall experience, you'll find yourself with a fun game to dive into every once in a while, especially with a few like-minded friends for a short few bouts at a time. Ozymandias really feels like one of those games that you play and you walk away from and you keep coming back to. And over the next, 2 or 3 years, you've racked up countless hours. But there you have it, folks. My personal 10 best from Next Fest that I think are well worth keeping your eyes on. Again, I'll be doing multiple deep dive videos on quite a few of these games in the coming days. About 6 or so of these games are going to get that extra treatment, so don't hesitate to subscribe if you're curious for more information and gameplay footage, as well as strategy, sim, management, and tactical RPG gaming coverage in general. There's lots to look at, and I'm really excited to share more. Again, don't hesitate to add these games to your Steam wishlist to help the devs out, and feel free to drop your own thoughts in the comments down below. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.